Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
We made this.
Oh, yes, right into spoiler territory, right out of the gate. Here we go, folks. Here we go.
Black alert.
Okay, Craig McKenzie, welcome to We Are Starfleet. You've been on the show a couple of times in the past. Love having you on. You always have great thoughts in both media, podcasting, review. Your website, Kneel Before Blog, is packed with great content. We're here today to discuss Star Trek Discovery, the latest episode. Excuse my dogs, they wanted to come down here and also be a part of the podcast. Star Trek Discovery's latest episode that premiered over Christmas, Stormy Weather. Craig, tell me high-level thoughts before we get into it here. We have an AI gaining consciousness aboard the Starship Discovery, and shenanigans, just 2 seasons ago we fought rogue AI. I thought we were done with this.
Well, hello. It's great to be back on the show so soon after recently being back on the show. So it's great to be here around this festive period. But yeah, high-level thoughts. I really liked this episode. It felt very classic Star Trek in some ways, about we're stuck in an anomaly and we have to get out of it. And they even lampshade it in this episode by saying, oh yeah, we have some data from the Enterprise, which one, and Voyager, again, which one, that details what we can expect from this. And it's this escalating problem while you have on the ship, as you say, the emerging AI. And I like the idea that Zora is a benevolent rather than malevolent AI. That's an interesting take, because I'm so used to and so sick of killer AIs at this point.
Yeah, it's getting really exhausting. Bad robots. We get it. Technology is bad. Computers are scary.
Yeah, they're going to kill us, apparently, because we will create something that will be our own undoing. That's what's going to happen.
I'm trying to think of one of the first iterations of AI developing consciousness as a storyline in Star Trek, and I keep going back to Turnabout Intruder. And I don't know if that's the correct episode or not, because Star Trek has always played with all these, computers gaining consciousness. The Archons, Return of the Archons. You had that computer running that planet where when it would go to dusk, they would all just go on a killing spree, right? And that's such a sci-fi trope, I feel like.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of the ultimate computer. Turnabout Intruder is when Captain Kirk gets body swapped with a woman.
Right.
Yeah, but the ultimate. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
The ultimate computer is the M5 with a Daystrom.
The M5, yeah. Oh, I'm also thinking of Nomad, the episode where they kill Scotty.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of killer computers, and there was a couple episodes where there was a society ran by a computer where Kirk showed up, decided it was stupid, and imposed his own views on how they should run.
Yes, classic Western imperialism at work. Thanks, Captain Kirk. Stormy Weather. Folks, we're going to do a little bit of a shorter episode today with regards to the holiday, but general feedback on this episode is very positive across the interwebs. It was directed by none other than Jonathan Frakes. He came back for this episode, and I feel like it shows.
Yeah, Frakes always does a great job with it. He gets the tension in a scene. He gets to the root of the emotion of a scene. He does really well with the modern sensibilities that Discovery has, because it does have a very modern feel about it in terms of the way that you use the camera and all that stuff. So I imagine that
it really
might have been a
does.
challenge for him to take to as a director, because he'd be so used to directing old school Star Trek. And I think he talked about that when he did the Orville, where he's like, well, this is just like directing Next Generation. It's exactly the same. But Discovery will be a different beast for him, I would imagine.
Right, right. It's very cinematic. It's the most cinematic Star Trek we have on TV.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it very much reminds me a lot of, I mean, of course, Jonathan Frakes directed Star Trek First Contact, which is one of the most popular Star Trek films, and a very popular film in and of its own right. You don't need to be a fan of Star Trek to enjoy that movie. So this episode with, and in the past where he's directed, always seems to have that real strong grasp of building the characters. And in this episode, we get a lot of that with the Starship Discovery's computer that has named itself Zora, which we'll get into, and Captain Michael Burnham. Before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about how we just basically get rid of the crew for this episode.
Well, as in at the end, or in terms, or when they go to the anomaly, none of the bridge crew are there for no reason.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We get into this anomaly, it's always an anomaly, right? Like, it's the DMA. We're going to jump into a subspace rift that was created by the DMA, and we're going to go into it, which, I don't know if you're aware of this, Craig, but when you go into a subspace rift, that's dangerous.
Yeah, it's never a good idea.
Yeah. The other thing that we have here throughout this episode, well, not throughout, but setting up this episode, is, there's some really cool sci-fi exploration, classic Star Trek exploration type stuff going on when they go into the subspace rift to try and determine what this DMA is doing. And we get the .23s out there, which I thought was really cool. We get to see a little bit more of these little dot drones that assist with repairing the ship and, acting as little avatars of the crew. What did you think of this?
I think it's pretty cool. It's just an update on stuff we've seen before, usually on Voyager or whatever. Let's launch a probe. Oh, look, the probe's broken.
Let's launch our probe.
It's that equivalent, isn't it? But it's a little robot with a face, so you can feel sorry for it when it dissolves.
Yeah. I felt it felt pretty impactful when the .23 goes out into the ether to try and like determine what's out there, because nothing is out there. The Discovery jumps in. There's no sensory input. It's just there's nothing.
Yeah.
We've seen this before in Star Trek Voyager, where they had to cross, I can't remember the name of the damn nebula or expanse or whatever they called it, but there was nothing.
In Night, I think the episode you're thinking of is where they first encounter the Malon.
That could be. Is that the one where the crew goes into cryo sleep for the duration of the journey, and it's just the Doctor and 7
No,
and
I think
9?
that episode's called One. And then there was an Enterprise episode that was basically the same episode. That was, I can't remember what that one was called, but it was essentially the same episode where it was just Phlox and a hallucinatory T'Pol.
Yes, I remember that one. So we've seen this episode before. It's a pretty awesome. I think it's a pretty awesome way to kind of get rid of all your ensemble crew and your cast, and just like let them go off screen for a little while, and let's just examine these two characters on board the starship alone.
Yeah, they don't make the episode about that, though. It only really happens at the end. You have all this stuff flying around before then, so it's the last 5-10 minutes where they go into the pattern buffer. But before that, you have a lot of interesting crew interaction. I like the brainstorming scene. That was really good. Let's try and fire a torpedo or something, or let's just fly in a random direction and see what happens.
Yeah. Booker wants to go out in his ship. He's like, let me go out there. Let me help. I want to head out, scout things out. And he gets overruled, which I think rightly so. I think that, and you tell me what you think here, Craig. In my opinion, I think Booker is trying to do maybe a little bit too much.
He just wants to be useful. He wants to keep busy. He's struggling to process everything. So he just doesn't want to be idle for any length of time, which you can completely understand. It's just, as soon as there's something to do, he's like, let me do it. Because he goes into engineering and says to Stamets, put me to work. Whatever you need, I'll do it.
Well, to that effect, he goes down to help out Stamets, try and like, hey, we need to be ready to jump. So when they try to leave the subspace rift, they find that they can't. They don't know where the exit is anymore, and they don't know where anything is in relation to their actual position because there's no external sensor information. And Zora, the starship's computer, has no idea, they're unable to calculate how they got in. So Burnham orders the spore drive, right? And as Booker is in the spore, what the heck do you call it? The spore navigator, he jumps in, and they go to black alert and they go to jump, and they can't get out. So there's like a power surge. Booker gets knocked out of the thing, and he's and his I don't know, what do you call it, Craig? The spots that he has as an empath.
Yeah,
they all light up, and he's like, he's lit up.
That he has. Yeah, I don't know what they're called.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called. So he lights up, and they're looking, and they're trying to figure out like what the heck happened, and Booker starts seeing his father, which I thought was really kind of crazy.
Yeah, and they front loaded that earlier in the episode where he says, "Well, I would never put my father on a family tree." So it's clear that stuff went on there, and then you have all this stuff about him understanding where his father was coming from and seeing compassion and companionship as a weakness because the Emerald Chain exploited that with him. So, and it's an interesting step forward for him as well, because at the end of the episode, he decides to believe that it's actually his father's spirit speaking to him, which allows him to believe that his brother and nephew aren't dead, that they're out there somewhere, and he'll see them again.
He comes to these grips after, throughout the episode, he's arguing with the ghost of his father, who calls him Tarex. I don't know if you caught on to that.
I caught on to the using his real name, but I didn't quite catch what it was. I suppose it's not relevant what that name was. It's just pretty clear that Cleveland Booker isn't his real name. It's what he's chosen to go by now.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
We've gotten some hints that Cleveland Booker has a very checkered past, right? We know that as a courier, he's had to make unfortunate, hard decisions, and he undoubtedly still grapples with the moral ramifications of all of these decisions. He went out to save transworms, right? Turns out his father was hunting transworms for the Emerald Chain, hunting other living creatures for their, for science experiments or to weaponize them, or one way or the other. We know that the Emerald Chain are a bunch of baddies, and they enslaved a lot of people to do bad deeds for them, as we are finding out in this season through little bits and details of these stories. So Tarex, Cleveland Booker, he leaves his past behind, and I think him returning to his homeworld, Quadrant, and having destruction of Quadrant, I think he was finally starting to find his way back to who he actually is, and having that all taken away from him. So Booker is definitely a character who has to go through some serious loss, through some serious character finding of his own self. And this episode hallucinating his father and understanding, coming to grips with that loss, coming to grips with the fact that, yes, they're behind me. That name is behind me. And now, today, I have to deal with all of the ramifications of not only my actions, but my loss. And where does Booker go from here? And Craig, for me, I do feel as though my theory is that in the second half of the season, Booker is going to go maybe a little AWOL from the Discovery. I think he's going to try and do something that he thinks will help, and it winds up not helping.
I think he'll still be pulled towards his darker impulses, because that's still out there. He even has that conversation with Saru at the end of this episode, where Saru talks about, I have to sit opposite the baul in a council chamber every day or whatever, and I'm still full of anger because, from my point of view, it happened a few weeks ago or whatever. You know, it wasn't that long ago that he remembered being hunted and fearing them, and now he has to pander to, well, not quite pander to them, but he has to negotiate with them and find a way to work with them. And he talks about suppressing that urge to give into his anger because he thinks that working together is a better way forward. But it's a worthy conflict because it still exists and it's something that he has to deal with. And Booker is experiencing the same thing, where he's pulled towards vengeance against whoever created the DMA, or pulled towards maybe being his better self by Burnham. And I suspect there will be a real test for him. I'm going to guess that it's going to happen in the next episode because it's the mid-season finale. So I suspect there'll be a bit of a turning point where it looks like Booker's going off the rails at the end of that one or during that one. That's my guess. It's just a theory. I don't know for sure, but that would, with it being a mid-season finale and it going off air for a while, it seems like a reasonable cliffhanger, and it depends what they're setting. Well, it goes with what they're setting up as well.
Yes, agree with you. I definitely feel like this is all going to come to a head. While in the meantime, Booker is going through his situation. We have Zora, who has given herself a name. Let's back up just a tiny bit and talk about Zora. Zora is the culmination of the sphere data from season 2 integrating with the Discovery's computer and gaining consciousness. It's touched on in season 3. Like, there's a couple of bits, and throughout season 3, you know, Ian and I were like, "Hey, wait a second, what's going on with Zora here? Like, are we just ignoring this?" And so now, here we are, season 4, and we're getting it, you know? I'm guessing, my own headcanon, if you will, Zora has taken a long time to develop this consciousness to a point of having emotions and being able to articulate what all of these things mean. So, very interesting stuff. Zora is in the bar playing a game with Gray. Talk to me, how did you feel about this whole scene with Gray? Let me set the stage for you real quick. So we jump into the subspace rift, and Captain Burnham calls all crew to stations. And I found it hilarious that the bar immediately empties out with the exception of Gray.
Yeah, Gray has no job on the ship. He's just there.
Yes, which feels a little bit like some meta commentary.
A little bit, and I liked that they paired Gray and Zora up because they're quite similar in the sense that they've only just gotten to grips with the fact that they have a body, with Zora's body being the ship, and Gray, obviously, his new synth body. So they're getting to grips with the whole idea of having sensation again and having to process emotions in different ways and having to deal with all that entails. So pairing them up was an interesting choice. I thought it was a really fascinating choice because there was that level of understanding between them that they could discuss, so Gray could dig into what Zora was experiencing because he was experiencing something similar. So I like it when they identify, here's two characters that have some common ground, and we can use that to springboard into what we're trying to say here.
Yeah, I found it interesting that Gray needs to ask Zora, like, "Hey, so can you tell me what's going on? Can you clue me in here?" And it's a really good sequence that, in my opinion, worked well, where Zora has to struggle, right? It's they are clearly struggling with all the information, the lack of sensor input, right? And the lack of being able to discern what any of it means. And so Gray decides, like, hey, let's play a game. Let's play this game and let's focus in. So then we get to them, enjoying these private moments, just the two of them. And then suddenly Zora says, oh, I'm detecting something on the outside of the hull. Gray says, you need to tell the captain. And I don't know how you felt about this, but the fact that Zora wasn't immediately, like, pinging Captain Burnham to tell them, like, hey, listen, we have something going on, and it took more than a minute or two, that signaled to me potential problems. Because as Ian and I discussed in the previous episode, what happens if you have a starship becoming self-aware and you need to order it, right to the edge of the singularity, putting your whole crew at risk to save, another ship or something to that effect. And the starship is like, that might destroy me, so no.
Yeah, there's always been this thing in Star Trek about how they say that the ship is another character within the show, and it's kind of a sentimental point that they make. It's like, yeah, the Enterprise is just as much as part of the show as any of the characters are, or Voyager, or whatever. And yeah, you can assign, qualities to the ship, obviously, that don't exist, but this literalizes it. This makes the ship now a character within the show. And as you say, it is interesting, the whole prospect of, okay, we need to get between these two combating aliens, and then Zora can be like, I'm not doing that. That will hurt. That will hurt me. I'll get hit with a torpedo or something, and that's going to hurt. So, yeah, at what point is Zora going to push back and say, no? And then how's it going to affect, say, Burnham's decisions? Because now she has to consider that the ship that they're inhabiting is a sentient being that has to be protected as much as the crew does. Whereas before it's like, yeah, we'll lose like 2 decks or whatever if we do this, but everyone will survive, so it's worth the risk. But in this case, it's, we're going to do serious harm to this being we are now traveling inside.
Yes, the resulting sequence where Zora finally says, like, hey, Captain, there's something going on part of the hull. And, there's an imminent hull breach. It's about to blow. And we have poor Ensign Cortez is, working on a relay conduit and trying to fix something. And then all of a sudden, boom, the hull rips apart and poor Ensign Cortez is sucked out into the vacuum of the subspace rift. And it's a very effective moment. You never want to see your crew members die, and poor Ensign Cortez is there, and he doesn't have a red shirt, but he has to make the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah, and he was seconds away from safety because the force field goes up just before he reaches the boundary.
Just before, yeah. And I don't know, like, I guess you could pick it apart, but in that particular scene, maybe it was filmed this way and shot this way on purpose. But it did seem to me that Ensign Cortez could have made it to safety, but Zora put the force field up anyway.
I suppose it's a probability thing, isn't it? This is the last point where I have to put the force field up, otherwise the destruction will be too much to contain. But Cortez didn't do himself any favours either, because he stuck around longer than he needed to. I mean, if it were me, you wouldn't have to tell me twice. I'd be running to the other side of the deck, no problem.
Yeah, right? For real. As soon as I knew something was happening, I'd be like, all right, forget this relay conduit. We're out of here, man.
Down tools, I'm off.
Yeah. Back in the bar, Zora explains, what exactly happened and her inability to save the crew member. And Gray is fairly, empathetic about the whole situation. It definitely seems like this particular crew is full of individuals who genuinely care about the well-being of their shipmates, and they definitely don't gloss over things. I do think it's a little problematic that we have so many characters who are so empathetic that maybe we can't get things done because a starship computer needs to respond to commands and deliver information like immediately. There should be no delay, And I chalk this up to Gray's inexperience of being involved in a crew of this. But in my mind, I probably would have said, listen, you need to deliver this information immediately. Like there should be no delay, And it's good that Gray points it out, but I don't know. I just...
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
I think this is a really good episode and really good writing in that way because it makes me question everything.
It could just be a symptom of the fact that Zora doesn't understand what those inputs are at this point. So
Yes.
maybe once she understands it, and I think her development will be much quicker than it would be for a human or alien character because she is a computer. So she can process things much more quickly. So it's more like if you ask her to consider something, she's like, okay, I've thought about it. Because in computational cycles, a couple of seconds is a million years, it's enough time to sift through tons of data and arrive at a conclusion. So maybe now that she understands the whole, okay, I need to figure out how to focus here, that this won't necessarily happen again. So it won't be that she won't realize that there is stuff that she's missing in terms of what's happening to the hull. But then if it was someone monitoring the sensor inputs, they could have just as easily missed that as well. The computer might not have been looking for the right things, because sometimes in Star Trek it's that we weren't looking for the right thing, we weren't scanning for the right thing, that's why we didn't find it. So it's another version of that, I think.
So on the bridge there is real quick, let's real quick talk about Lieutenant Detmer and Lieutenant Owo in their super cool fitness outfits. I love it.
Yeah, we've seen Detmer do that before. She was she was, when she was sifting through her mental health struggles last season, she was like boxing or something like that. She was
Yep. Yeah, I love the upgrade on the fitness outfits instead of the 1986 pajamas.
I also like seeing the crew just doing stuff before they're asked to go on a mission. So it's like, finally we can get away from this downtime that we're not enjoying or something like that. I don't know, I always liked it in Star Trek as well, where they're called into the middle of a crisis and they just turn up on the bridge and wearing whatever they were wearing in the holodeck or something like that. It's just because they haven't had time to change because it's a crisis situation. We haven't quite had that, but I would quite like that. They just show up on the bridge in their workout clothes or whatever.
Yeah, it would be a fun sequence, but it would be a lot more fun if like they're called to the bridge in a crisis and then all of a sudden a Q-like entity teleports them away and they're in their pajamas on an away mission.
Yeah.
I always found that it's just fun. How did you feel about the moment where Lieutenant Owashikin insists on helping to go down to engineering, and there's this little tense moment with Captain Saru, who orders her back to her station?
I thought that was a bit forced. I do appreciate the attempt to bring in more backstory, and then she talks about how there was a friend of mine who died who I couldn't save, and there's the whole being there, bearing witness is worth it within itself and all that stuff. But I didn't really see where that came from, because she was so insistent that she needed to help, and Saru was like, no, we've got people for that, it's fine, it's going to get done, there's people down there already, you don't need to be there. So it was a bit of a forced moment. I liked it in terms of a bit of a character thing, but I would have liked it to be a bit more organic, such as with, was it Reese in the previous episode where he was like, well, I know what it was like being evacuated from a colony, and you really want to be involved here because it's paying that forward in a way. That made sense, that worked, whereas this was just kind of forced. It was good, but it was forced.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciate Michelle Paradise listening to the fan base and saying, okay, the fans want more Bridge Crew story. They want to know more about these characters. But to your point, I don't want it to be forced. If you're going to give me story about Lieutenant Joanne Owashikan, then let's spend more than 30 seconds. Let's take 10 minutes out of our episode's runtime and just just follow Owashikan around the ship. I don't know, like have her in the bar or working out with Detmer and like talking about, how back on Earth, her friend died and she couldn't help, and she has this immense guilt over it, being reminded of it now. This whole crew has jumped forward to the 32nd century, left so much behind. They're racked with guilt as a starship, just in general. Like, they all need therapy. We've been saying this every episode. So let's spend 10 minutes per episode with each individual bridge crew member and make it meaty. Give us the meat.
Yeah.
Because right now I feel like, when you go to a restaurant and you order a sandwich and it's all bread and no meat? That's what we're getting. Like, we order the sandwich and we're getting the sandwich. There's no meat.
Yeah, and there was an opportunity within the episode as well, because she could have been the one seeing Cortez die and then reflect on it from her own point of view. It's like, well, there was another time I was helpless to save someone, and Saru saying, well, you were there in the end. He wasn't alone at the very least.
You were there in the end.
And that's important. And there was very much that connection you could have drawn there. That would have been far more organic. Fair enough, why would the navigator be down on deck, whatever it is, looking at a hull breach?
Sure.
But
yeah.
I don't know, maybe she was just there. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. And, instead we get Dr. Pollard, the chief medical officer on the Discovery, who, by the way, Dr. Colbert is still not the CMO. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird writing decision, and I appreciate the effort. Like you said, I appreciate, the characterization, but, let's get some more depth to it. As we've been saying before, it is a little surface level, and we need to get away from that surface level bit.
Yeah, I feel like it's a symptom of the damage that's been done to those characters over the 3 seasons preceding this. It's not something you can just fix overnight, but I think part of the problem is now we've got a new character in Zora, so she's going to take up a lot of screen time, I would imagine. So that's going to push some of those others even further into the background. I think it's just going to be more of the same, really. We'll get little tidbits of them now and again, but nothing major. And I do appreciate the idea that the bridge crew aren't aligned to being main characters like they are in other Star Trek shows, where we've got the characters that they want to explore, really, but we don't need the tactical officer, because the tactical officer isn't necessarily that interesting, just turns up and fires weapons or whatever. But someone like Adira, who's a recently commissioned officer, hanging around in engineering and learning from people, that's perhaps more interesting than having just the senior staff be the main characters.
So we are stuck in the subspace rift, and the only way to get out is to go through it. And there's this substance inside the rift that is eating away at the shields and eating away at the hull. So the solution, in order to exit, they have found a way out using sonar and checking the electromagnetic waves and tracking particles with an actual ping. So going back to 1940s technology of sonar and just following the wave to get out. But in order to do so, they need to go through the rift, which is eating away at the ship in a mega bad way. I loved the VFX. This show is killing it with the visuals.
Well, it's stunning visually, yeah. They definitely spend the money on it.
The shots of the Discovery going through this rift, the external shots, and seeing parts of the hull just being ripped away from the ship, exposing, the individual decks and the individual quarters. Really effective stuff. And it really, it made me sit on the edge of my seat. Like at the end of the day, I knew they were going to come out the other side because this is Star Trek and it's going to be okay. But I was like, oh wow, this is really good stuff. Really good stuff. The crew has to be put into transporter pattern buffers in order to save the crew because as organic beings, they would not survive this journey. Clever solution to the problem, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, nice callback to relics. Someone did this before. It happened before. It worked before. So we'll give this a go. And then it gives you an opportunity to just isolate Burnham and Zora so they can work through their emotional issues. With Zora talking about not understanding how to process fear, and Burnham talking about how emotions help shape who you are and hardship helps shape who you are. I think it's a bit of an inelegant connection because I don't see how Burnham's plight in her hit childhood and stuff matches up to what Zora's experiencing. But I still really like the interplay between them, the way that Zora used Burnham to draw strength from. And yeah, the captain propping up the ship was a nice choice, I think. And using the song as well, this Stormy Weather song being about fear and about not knowing if you're going to see the morning and all that stuff. I think they use the song really effectively.
Yeah, it's a good song. It's a classic from, I think it was written back in the 30s, and various performers have sung it. But I really do like this version. Fun fact, I looked it up. So Lena Horne, who sang it in the 1943 film Stormy Weather, Lena Horne was the grandmother of Star Trek Discovery producer Jenny Lumet.
There we go. Maybe that's why it was used.
There you go. Very connected. Very connected. I liked everything that happened. I do agree with you, and I'm glad you said it, that the connection between Burnham's past and her own plights and her own situations don't necessarily correlate to Zora. But as captain, I felt like, Captain Burnham and Zora need to have this one-on-one. They need to be like best freaking friends now, because you can't not have your computer going rogue on you. And I do feel like that, considering the events of season 2 and Control, like Burnham should have a tight grasp on what's going on with Zora, because it is definitely a security risk.
Yeah, and there's a debate to be had over whether Zora is a tool or a person. So they'll have to consider, how do we perceive this entity that now lives on the ship, that now is the ship?
Exactly.
So it's going to be, are we going to have to include Zora in decisions? Is she going to be a voice at the meetings? You would imagine so, because she has to be, since you're essentially throwing her body into danger on a weekly basis.
So now, does this mean that Zora is going to get a rank? Will she be, Lieutenant Zora?
Could be.
Yeah. Could be. I can definitely see a some type of measure of a man moment back at Starfleet headquarters with Admiral Vance. Vance seems to me like he would have some serious issues with Zora.
Yeah. And maybe Rillick as well. There's maybe something to do with Starfleet regulations around artificial intelligence on ships and things. But we don't know really what happened since the synth ban was lifted. It didn't seem to be a problem to create a synth body for Grey, but...
Yeah, that's true.
But they've never they've never developed ships' computers into proper functioning artificial intelligence, even in this era. So maybe there's a whole thing around that, and maybe there's a reason why they don't.
There's a reason why. Yeah, there could be a reason, or maybe there's just no reason. Star Trek has always had a wonky relationship with AI, and including it, how to use it, where does it work, and where doesn't it work.
Yeah, and it's a very topical thing at the moment, because artificial intelligence is a question we're grappling with in our own society, so Star Trek should be playing with that in some way, and it looks like they are.
The final scene of this episode is Burnham finishing her own tree, the family tree, which I thought was a nice callback to the Lilogai orb from the previous episode. It's a nice way to showcase, like, hey, you know, this is my family. And found family is the theme of Star Trek Discovery. So it only made sense to me to close out this episode with Zora building her own tree and including all the memories of the crew. And I thought it was a really touching final moment for both Captain Burnham and Zora, and it was really effective in the context of Discovery and its themes as a whole.
Yeah, and it highlights that Zora is committed to the crew, loyal to the crew, has a connection to the crew, has a strong emotional connection to the crew, which suggests to me that she'll never turn on them, but any problems that arise might be around her trying to protect them, which may mean I'm not going to let you do this thing or let you go to this place because it will be dangerous. Everything they do is dangerous, pretty much. Every time they leave space dock, they're in danger. So Zora could become this kind of overprotective mother hen type character.
Right? I'm really curious to see where they're going to go with it. Craig, you gave this episode an 8.5 out of 10 on your blog. Do you still feel that way?
I do, yeah. I think it worked really well. The character stuff was on point. The stuff that didn't work quite as well didn't drag down the stuff that worked well. It was a good increasing tension Star Trek plot with a ticking clock. I'll always love those when they're done well. We're in danger. We've got so much time to solve this problem. How do we solve this problem? And they made it a character-driven solution rather than if we just reroute power to the main deflector dish and fire some beam that no one understands, then this will work. Oh, look, it worked. Problem solved. You know, your classic Voyager ending type thing where they just reroute power to some system and suddenly they're safe again. But no, the solution came from character, which is always much better rather than some made up sci-fi crap, because it's magic, right? Isn't it? You know, we don't understand how it works because it's all made up. So
it's always magic. It's always magic of some kind. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I give this episode an 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. I felt really strongly that the character dynamics of this episode, as you just said, really worked well towards driving the solution. We had a classic Star Trek episode here. While it's all mostly just character stories, great stuff with Booker and his ongoing story here. Bringing in the story of his father, I thought was really good because we don't really know a whole lot about Book's actual backstory outside of being a courier coming from Quajan, and exploring that a little and kind of, you know, the ongoing building of the Emerald Chain and the ramifications and consequences of their colonizing and destructive force that Osira brought to the Emerald Chain to all these colonies on trying to build her own little empire. I thought it was really good. And on that note, I'm still bummed that we got rid of Osira, because Osira could have been a very compelling returning villain for this season.
Yeah.
We have the Emerald Chain coming back through these little comments and these little stories, and how fun would it be that in the latter half of the season, we have an episode where Osira rears her head again as she's rebuilding the Emerald Chain. You know, that would be very compelling Star Trek, very DS9 style, you know, Gul Dukat type.
I mean, does the chain still exist? I don't think they ever explained whether it was disbanded after Osira died. And if that's the case, though, that makes it even worse as a threat, because one person being dealt with is enough to get rid of it, which suggests that, yeah, they were just a kind of little ramshackle operation, which is the impression you got early last season. There was some kind of bizarre little group that caused trouble, but they weren't really a huge threat, and then Osira was doing stuff. And then now it feels like they're the modern version of the Orion Syndicate, where they're everywhere, and we don't, or are they everywhere? Are they anywhere? We don't know. I mean, you wouldn't get much from the Orion Syndicate, but you get them mentioned every now and again as being a thing that were out there, and the Federation just sort of accepted that they couldn't get rid of, but had to deal with occasionally. Yes. It should be interesting to see how it goes, and, you know, it does seem like they could very well be out there still being a bunch of bad guys, or maybe they're reforming because we have an Orion at Starfleet Academy. It's hard to say. Yeah. But that's what I love about
these stories. And that's what I love about podcasting. You know, we get to talk about these things. We get to talk about these theories, whether they go in that direction, what I would like to see, what you would like to see, what we are going to see. You know, how cool would it be if, you know, we predict something here and then it happens on screen? Yeah. That's fun. That's fun for me.
Imagine I get the prediction of book escaping or book going a bit too far in the next episode, right? Because the mid-season finale. I'm putting a stamp on it right now.
I hear you. Well, listen, you know, make sure that if it happens, I'm going to call on you. We're going to tweet about it. We're going to chat about it one way or the other. We'll include those comments. Craig, thank you so much for joining me to discuss Star Trek Discovery Stormy Weather.
My pleasure.
Where can we find you on the internets?
We'll start with my contractual obligation. So I can be personally found under Nemesis 4909, which started life as a Resident Evil reference and later became a Star Trek reference also once Star Trek Nemesis released. It was unintentional, but it was a beautiful combination of two of my favourite things. So that was a nice little touch. Outside of that, on this network, you can find me on, well, soon to be Rarely Going, which will be coming back in a week or so because Prodigy is coming back while Discovery is off the air. So we'll be back. We'll be taking the con for a while and doing that, me and Luke and various others that will be doing that. So we're doing that. I crop up sometimes on podcast 616. I did all of the Spider-Man movies except for two of the Tom Holland ones. So if you want to hear me talk about old Spider-Man movies, then you can hear me talk about them there. I was on one of the Hawkeye episodes with Mark. That was good fun. I also recently appeared on the first episode of Academy Watch, which is Bo's podcast about award season stuff, talking about Tick, Tick, Boom. It got pretty emotionally intense, so listen to that, and you can hear us tear into Tick, Tick, Boom and what it meant to us, which was really nice. As was mentioned earlier, I can be found on Kneel Before Blog. That's on Facebook and Twitter. Just type it in, or kneelbeforeblog.co.uk, where I'm covering Discovery, Arrowverse stuff like Legends of Tomorrow and The Flash and so on. And there's an attached podcast with the next episode coming out being our December news roundup. That will be in your feed next week. So check us out there. That's where I'm all found.
Very good, very good. And folks, you can find Craig and myself and all these shows and other folks that we're talking about at wemadethisnetwork.com. It's a collection of podcasts, writing reviews, blog entries, etc., all centered around pop culture, TV, film, media in general. So please check that out. You can follow this podcast's show on Twitter and Instagram at StarfleetPod. Make sure you follow, you like, you subscribe on your favorite podcast feed. And at the end of the day, if all you do is give us a 5-star review, that is the goal, because the more reviews we get, the more stars we get, the more it pops up in other people's feeds. And that's how the algorithms, the almighty algorithms, like to work and function. Craig, thank you again. Can't wait to see what happens next week to see whether your predictions come true or not. And until then, folks, live long and prosper.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Right in the childhood.
Obviously, because of the inclusion of Firestar and Iceman, all the bets are off, because they weren't friends in the comic books.
No, it was bizarre. Like, Spidey and Iceman have become friends, and I wonder if they've become friends because of the show, or
maybe
vice versa. But yeah, and we did notice a lot. Firestar was basically just Human Torch. They could have just Jenny Storm.
She really did.
Although
really did just have the Human Torch.
I did get my hopes. I heard the last name Jones.
Pick a disc.
Evermore I've not listened to. There's a special that's on Disney Plus actually, which I think is her playing Folklore, which I might watch.
It's so good. It made me appreciate. I said after I watched that, I was like, every album, I don't care who releases it, every album needs something like this to accompany it, because I think it adds so many layers to an album when you get to hear the artist specifically talk about why they wrote the song, and the producers are in the same room, like talking about the process. It just makes the album that much better. So that's a requirement now. Every album that comes out needs a documentary.
frame to frame.
I just want to say, I really love your philosophy about no matter how good or bad a movie is, there's a lot of effort that goes into it. I really like that philosophy because I find myself grappling with that. It's kind of like it's really easy to tear something down because the finished product that comes out in the cinema or on streaming is nominally bad, but it has actually had a fair amount of effort that went into it, regardless of how that translates.
I mean, Cats is a really good example of that, actually. If you actually look into the story of the visual effects on Cats and how it was literally the day before release, the visual effects team was still working on that movie.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.